Welcome to Decoding, man. I'm your host, Sam, and I'm very glad you can join me for today's episode. I've been wanting to do this one for a while now, but we're finally here. But before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform it is that you listen to, and feel free to share it with others as well who you know would enjoy the content. So today's topic is going to be dating. Particularly for Christians, what does dating look like? What is this mystical thing that we call dating? What's it about? So this is a less of a personal experience sort of thing, and more about observations and biblical guidelines on the topic. And I'm going to probably split it into what I'd say is two parts: how to go about looking for a partner, and then how to conduct yourself when you're in a relationship. So there's kind of the two things I'm going to talk about. But I think it'd be good to briefly talk about what is dating. What is it? Right? So the Bible doesn't speak about dating at all. See, in the biblical times, arranged marriage was the way of life. It's just how things went. We do have spatterings, though, of passages that speak to those who aren't married. One of those passages, one of the best passages for this, would be chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. And in it, there's a bunch of unpacking to do if you were to go through the whole thing. But I just want to put focus here on verse 39, which says this: a woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes. But he must belong to the Lord. So this passage is important because it speaks to someone who is free to marry. So without that cultural limitation of arranged marriage, it says that they are free to marry whoever they please. So for instance, in this passage, the widow is free to marry whoever she pleases. But their partner must belong to the Lord. They must be a believer. So, firstly, Christian dating is two followers of Jesus Christ. Christians don't date non-believers. Whoever we're dating must belong to Jesus. This will be strikingly clear why as we go through the rest of this episode, as we see some other things that come up. But that is the very first thing. It is two Christians. So secondly, Christian dating is a means to an end. It has a purpose: marriage. While dating is fun and exciting, it's about something else. It's not about itself. It's about finding a wife, not about finding a girlfriend. If you like the idea of having a girlfriend, but you're hesitant, unsure, or scared of the idea of marriage, then you're probably not ready to date. Now, don't get me wrong. You can be nervous about the future, unsure about the things that could change, but that's very different to having an aversion to the idea of marriage. So when it comes to Christian dating, we're looking for a Christian woman who you can see being your wife. That's basically it, right? But if that was it, then it'd be a lot simpler than that, wouldn't it? And I know as blokes, we'd love it to be simple. So how do you go about looking for a wife? This is probably the trickier bit to think about. Well, it'd be good to know what the Bible has to say about what makes a good wife. And so the first thing to mention here would be physical attraction. God knew what he was doing when he made us. Physical attraction is normal. It is good. It is part of relationships. It's not a mistake that we find women attractive. So for an example, let's go to Song of Songs, right? Old Testament book. It's mostly a husband and wife describing their partner's body in a very romantic and tasteful way. And it really speaks of the beauty of attraction between a husband and wife. And this is part of marriage, and it's something that we look for in a wife. And the reason I mention this is sometimes you'll have guys who ask, should they consider dating someone that they don't find attractive, in the hopes that maybe they'll grow to be attracted to them over time. And look, I won't say it can't happen or it won't happen, but it shouldn't be an expectation that it will. They are natural, given desires from God, and you probably shouldn't go against the grain there. And not that you can't, but again, it shouldn't be an expectation. But on the topic of beauty, the Bible does have something to say about what kinds of things are attractive, apart from outward appearance. So 1 Peter 3, it says this to women: your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. So say you're looking for a woman who doesn't concern herself with lavish things, fancy clothes, expensive jewelry, all of that, right? And not that she doesn't dress nice, but she isn't concerned with those things. Instead, she's someone who adorns herself with gentleness, has a quiet spirit, and she does these things because she knows they're of great worth to God. So you're looking for a woman who aims to please God with her character and not men with her appearance. Also, this passage mentions submission and speaks of Sarah, who called Abraham her Lord. She recognized that Abraham was the one who led the family, and she was willing and happy to submit to him, as is God's good design for men and women in marriage. So what you're looking for is a woman who shows a level of submission to authority. She isn't someone who rebels readily against those in charge, particularly the relationship with her father was a big one. But this is tricky, right? So as people get older, submission to and honoring parents looks different as an adult as opposed to a child. I'd say you're looking for someone who speaks well of their father despite knowing their shortfallings. And as you get older, you get to know the shortfallings of your parents more and more. And so I think particularly for a godly woman, there is a reservation of your criticisms about your father. So what you're looking for is a woman who doesn't speak poorly of her own father, would be a godly woman. Now, there's a section in Proverbs that has a description of a noble wife. It's probably one of the best descriptions of what a good wife looks like you can find in the Bible. It's a bit long, but stick with me as we read through it, and we'll pick up a few things as we go. So this is what it says: a wife of noble character who can find? She's worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hands she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed, and she is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Such a great proverb. So, firstly, I think what we see here is a description of a wife from around 1000 BC. So it describes a woman or a man in that time. That means that we shouldn't take this as a literal description of what the best wife looks like. Like she doesn't need to do exactly these things, right? The merchant and the sales and looking after servants. We need to look at the underlying principle of what makes a good wife. So one thing that's pretty hard to miss from this passage is that she works hard to provide and care for those around them. So verses 16 and 17, right? So she considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task, right? She works hard. We've got verse 15 and 20, right? She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. And then 20, she opens up her arms to the poor, extends her hands to the needy. So in our modern day context, we're looking for a woman who knows what it is to work hard. She may not work with her hands necessarily, but she knows what it is to wake up early, to sacrifice for others, to provide value to those around her. So on the contrary, you're not looking for a woman who is lazy, someone who spends most of her time having fun, hanging with friends and bludging off parents. That's not who you're looking for. If all she does is take from others, then all she'll do is take from you. Another thing to notice from this passage is how she speaks. So there in verse 26, she speaks with wisdom and faithful instruction is on her tongue. So a woman worthy of seeking after is wise. She has words of instruction. She's the kind of person whose opinion you want to hear. So if you're interested in someone, you want to get to know how they speak. In particular, how do they speak to others? What sort of advice do they give? Are they wise? You don't have to be old to be wise either, right? So just having a head screwed on straight, you think right, you're not a fool. Doesn't make foolish decisions, doesn't give foolish advice. Sometimes you won't know this about someone until you've spent a bit of time with them. So this can be a bit of a tricky one. The last thing to mention from this passage is the thing that never changes about a woman that makes her of noble character. So verse 30, it says this, charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. See how it talks about charm being deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but one who fears the Lord. Now, that doesn't change. And the woman who fears the Lord, that's to be praised. A woman who knows what's to be feared above all other things is her God. Because out of fear for her God, she lives out her faith. Only a woman who fears her creator God is a woman of noble character. Again, another reason why your wife needs to be a believer. How can she fear God, be of noble character if she hasn't put her trust in Jesus? But even so, does the work of her life, the fruit of her character, does it show you a woman who fears the Lord? Or does she fear people and their opinions? Okay, so that's a bit of a summary of what you're looking for in a woman. But practically, how do we go about dating? How do we go about this? Well, I'll give you some pointers, but keep in mind, everyone's different and you should use your discretion. And also, I speak somewhat from experience as someone who's dated and broken up a few times. So I'd like to think I've learnt from my mistakes. And I've also heard from others, their stories and their experiences. So all of that together, I'm just hoping that you'll find some helpful points in there. So firstly, if you're interested in someone, I think just pray and go for it. You know, ask them to go out and do something, coffee, walk, whatever it is really. If you're interested in someone, pray about it. But not for too long where it becomes weird, right? Like if she found out you've been praying for like 2-3 years, it'd just be weird. Like, you know, maybe you'd pray something like this, Lord, I'm interested in spending time with, you know, X, whoever it is. I ask that she would likewise be interested in spending more time with me, something like that. But just don't sit on it for too long, right? Eventually you get, you know, way too caught up in this idea of them in your head and, you know, it may never happen and maybe you just end up too afraid to ever even ask them out. So yeah, and if they're not interested, you might end up shattered because you've been thinking about it for so long. So just pray about it, go for it. And look, there is an appropriate amount of disappointment as well if they aren't interested, right? But you shouldn't be heartbroken. Now, this is one that I've learned by mistake, right? If she does say yes, she'd like to, go have coffee, whatever it is, she might make it a bigger deal than it is to you. So this is just a warning here that you might be thinking, that, you like to get to know them better, but, you'd like to know maybe if it's a good fit, whether you can see this going any further in the future. She might be really into you. So you just need to be aware that she might actually like you more than you know, and that just asking them out for coffee is a massive thing. And I have heard and also made the mistake that going out for coffee can be a big deal. Even if you make it sound like it's not a big deal, it can be built up in their mind to be something massive. So just keep in mind that can happen. But at the same time, I've also caught up with people and coffee was nothing to them. So it really depends on the person, but you do need to be careful. Now, I don't really want to add too much more in this section because I think a lot of meeting people and getting to know them is just part of natural life. So sometimes this can really just happen naturally, the whole getting to know someone and meeting them. But I know in our modern context, people do use the internet to meet people. I am aware that there's Christian dating apps or things like that you can filter religious beliefs on. And so I thought it'd be worth making a comment on this approach to dating. So dating apps, they're fine to use. You're not sinning because you're using them as long as you're looking for a Christian. But, and this is a big but, I think you need to check your heart as to why you use one. So firstly, is it because of pressure to be married by others, either family expectations or from the majority of your friends being married and you just feel the pressure that you need to be? Or secondly, is it because you think there's no dateable women at your church? Now, this could be true, but I've known people using dating apps at congregations of young adults of over 200 people, and that's just not true. There's plenty of dateable women at church, yet they seem to be using dating app. Then thirdly, and I think most importantly here, is the kind of attitude online dating fosters in our hearts towards our potential future partner. See, as you look through profiles and see what kind of jobs people work and lifestyles and hobbies and all that whatnot, you develop this self-centered approach to relationships that it's all about finding someone who fits me and everything I like and what I'm looking for. They must suit all of my desires in a partner. And frankly, I think it's just a surefire way for a relationship to fail. Now, I know for a few people, online dating has worked for them, but I think we should really be sure and really be careful about our attitudes when we use them. All right, so the last thing for this episode is, what does dating look like when you do find someone? Well, the first point to make here, and it's a very big point to stress, is sexual purity. You aren't married to the day you say, I do. As Christians, we are to flee from sexual impurity. So 1 Corinthians 6, starting verse 18, it says this: flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So I think Paul makes it pretty clear that we are to stray far away from sexual impurity because we are the temple of the living God. The Holy Spirit lives in us. And so we should honor God with our bodies and the way we use it. And then also Genesis chapter 2. So when a man and a woman leave their family, that's when they are united and become one family. That means Christians don't live together before marriage either. Christians don't trial run married life before being married. So those who do effectively null their marriage vows because it's not in sickness and in health for richer or for poorer. right? It becomes, if I like living with you and you don't annoy me, oh, then I stay with you. So imagine on your wedding day, you're saying your vows, and at the end of making your promises, saying death do you part. It's like, oh, only if, and then just insert some if, but, when clause. Okay, so it's not till death do you part then. And so the whole point is that no matter what your life looks like, you're going to go through it together. And so this idea that you move in, get an idea of what it's like to live together, you're just nulling your whole marriage vows, because you're saying, I'm not going to stay with you if this is hard, or that part of being with you is annoying, or whatever. No, the whole point of the marriage vows is you work through it together, through thick and thin, no matter what. So Christians, as they look towards marriage and dating, they don't live together to trial run married life. Now, another important thing in dating is have fun. Like, actually have fun. This is someone you might spend the rest of your life with. There should be someone whose company you enjoy. Dating is fun. It is exciting. Don't make it into some clinical process that sucks the life out of something that's meant to bring you joy. But at the same time, you need to be realistic about dating. It kind of sucks too. So talking to a married friend and compare it to married life with dating life, it's so different. Dating sucks compared to married life. They'd have to make sure that they're not hanging out late at night so they could keep away from temptation. They love each other, but at the same time they know they can't physically express that love. That's off limits to a marriage. And I think the hardest part of all of that in dating is that it falls into this rock and a hard place, dating, in that it doesn't come with much relational security, but at the same time, you're kind of committed to trying to make it work out. It's like commitment without commitment. It's actually quite tricky. See, when you're married, you can share and talk about hard things because you've made promises that you're going to be there through hard times. But dating doesn't come with any of those promises. So it can be hard to open up and share everything with someone because you know that they may not stick around. They can choose to leave. And personally, I know that after opening up to enough people and it not working out, you can get a bit skeptical of opening up to people again and again. But if you are keen to marry, it is something you need to do. You need to be willing to open up and be vulnerable with someone if marriage is something you're interested in. Now, the whole point of this thing called dating is to know what their relationship with Jesus is like and whether they're the kind of woman that you would love to call your wife. But this is where we need to realize that we can never really know someone perfectly or fully. At some point, you need to say you're willing to trust God, knowing that this person also trusts God with their life, and that you'll have the rest of your lives to know each other better and better every day. That's the beauty of marriage. It'd be pretty sad to say that the wife you married on your wedding day, you know just as well 50 years later. You get to know your wife over the course of your marriage. And so you can't get to know someone perfectly dating them. Life can throw curveballs. The whole point of the marriage vows is that no matter what way that ball curves, you're going to be there. So, to summarize all of this, Christian dating is about finding a wife who loves Jesus more than they would ever love you. Someone that works hard, cares, and provides for those around them. They're wise, quiet in spirit, and glorifying Jesus with their life is much more important to them than fancy clothes or jewelry. That is a wife of noble character. Well, that brings us to an end of today's episode on dating. If you've got any thoughts or questions, please get in touch. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. But also don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to and share with others who might enjoy the content as well. But until next time, I'll catch you on the next episode of God and Men.